Hi, I'm Nick Murphy, and this is Records in My Life. Consequence, what I need is someone to burn up. Oh my God, attention. It's like honey inside my head.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Do tell us about the new record.
Well, it's called Run Fast, Sleep Naked. I took 5 years to put this thing out, which is a bit longer than I wish I'd taken, but I did. So.
It's better than Chinese democracy, by the way. Just a
Is it?
heads up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then, I'm just touring, just getting to know these songs. They take on a new life live, so that's always exciting. And just kind of head down doing the thing.
And tell us a bit about who you worked with on the album.
For this record, it was really one of the first records that I've ever worked with other people.
That's right.
I mean, the first record I ever put out, I kind of did everything myself. So that was a huge challenge, but deeply rewarding. A really major shift. And that was more of a philosophical approach as well. Was I realized, okay, this looks like this might be my job for a while. You know, I'm lucky enough to be able to do this for a while. So, do I really want to sit in a dark room on my own for hours and hours and hours on end for a living? And no, is the answer to that. So I was like, I want to work with other people. And I started working with Dave Harrington, who, if people are familiar with his stuff, is kind of this spearhead or kingpin of this kind of neo-experimental jazz New York scene. I don't really know. I know what it sounds like, you know. And that was, he would come around to my apartment in New York and we'd work on stuff. And very soon we ended up going to a studio, Figure 8, and that's where I found Phil Weinrobe, who was the engineer for that record. And we kind of formed this little holy trinity between the three of us that produced this record.
Dave Harrington has done some pretty cool stuff. I mean, he did Dark
keeps
Side,
doing cool stuff,
Dark Side, and like Frankie Rose he produced. But do you have a favorite
that he's done?
Dave Harrington.
I mean, I just love Dave. Just Dave fundamentally changed the way I think about music, which I can't say about really anyone else I've ever collaborated with. So. Yeah, what's my favorite music? I mean, I really like his solo stuff. You know, this it's super out there. It's like, I don't know, if doom jazz. It's just music, you know. And that's actually part of what Dave told me about music, which is every song is unique as a person. There's no line to follow. You have to get to know a song. You have to introduce yourself, and then you have to get out of the way and let it be what it wants to be and help it be what it wants to be. You know, I'm rambling. But yeah. No,
that's great. I mean, is there a record that, and it can be any album really, but kind of that grew on you in the beginning you really didn't like? It could, I mean, that's not to be a popular record for the masses, and you absolutely adore now.
Sure. I mean, I think it's so, and even, not even just records, songs on records, you know, the ones that you skip when you're younger, but then you get you're too lazy to skip it or whatever because you listen to the record, and then it sinks its teeth in, and that ends up informing you later in life what you're going to do. And all the records lots of the records I loved, especially when I was younger, all had songs like that. Like, I mean, even on, so Jeff Buckley's Grace was probably one of the first albums that I just rinsed and played again and again and again. I can't remember the name of the song on there. There's one where he basically just goes full thrash, you know, because it was the 90s, so he had to prove that he could do that thing. I was like, you know, what is this? But now, you know, as an adult, that's one of my favorite ones on the record. Fatboy Slim's You've Come a Long Way, Baby, towards the end of the record, he had there's some proper, you know, borderline trance kind of stuff, which again, when I was young, I was like, this is really intense. Like, what is this? But I would just, you know, also the laziness of a teenager can help you grow. I don't want to get up and change this song.
That's true.
Yeah. So that was a big one. But in terms of records that I hated that came
maybe
around.
Maybe not hate, but what
I'm trying to think of one that I didn't. I mean, there were definitely bands that I didn't understand. I mean, jazz. let's jazz. I know this program is supposed to be about records, but you see how abstract my brain works and really sucks with specifics. But jazz in general, I was like, what is this trash? You know, like who are these people pretending to get into like all these notes and, you know, like what are they playing? Where's the melody?
Well, yeah, your old, if I can say so, your previous name, because I mean, you that's if I'm allowed to say that.
Well, I mean, that's like jazz. That's not really, you know, it's like jazz, you know, like Chet Faker. That's like lounge jazz. That's like jazz that's like, you know, traditional jazz. That's like, you know, your songbooks and stuff like that. I guess what I'm talking about is like free jazz, experimental jazz, spiritual jazz, which is now one of my favorite genres. It's, you know, I listen to it every second day. I remember just thinking, this is nonsense. I'm never going to be into this genre. And then when I was like 19, I worked at a bookstore next to a record store, which again is another sort of thing that I'm grateful for, sort of forcing me to listen to things that I wouldn't to otherwise. You can see I'm pushing this whole argument of like, just because you want to listen to it doesn't mean it's the only thing you should listen to. I think it's important to be open-minded. But the guys next to me in the record store would play all this Afro jazz, and guys like Abdul Ibrahim or Dollar Brand. And I think it just like was forming connections, you know, in the back of my head while I was working in that bookstore. And then I don't know what happened. One day at work, I was like, I get this. I love this, you know.
What's a nice record to go home to and listen to, like a tour break, you know, before the next leg? And
George, I've been so obsessed with George Harrison's All Things Must Pass.
Right.
That's like, I love that record. And that's a record to go home to. There's nothing abrasive about that record. It's so, I love it, man. Yeah.
And you said are you living in New York City presently? Or?
No. I recently moved to Arizona.
Moved to Arizona?
Yeah, I've been in New York for like a couple of years. 6 years.
I was going to ask you for a good New York soundtrack.
A good New York sound. Well, I mean, Swans, To Be Kind was a record that really, I mean, I think that probably more speaks. I have this kind of, the older I get, it sounds kind of crazy, but that I mean, first of all, I think human beings are psychic, okay, in general. I know it's a crazy-ass word. It's the best word I can come up with. But I really think that the more I play, the more it's like I can't quite shut off what's coming in from around me. And living in New York, I started to understand and get into hardcore and bands like Swans, which I think are technically no wave, but they've gone so far beyond what was no wave in the beginning. Anyway, whatever genres, blah blah blah. But Swans To Be Kind was like, that's a New York record for me. It's really, it's like a weird guilty pleasure for me, that record, because I was never into anything that heavy, and especially later in my life, you know, it was like 28, 29 when I started. I was like, whoa. Shouldn't I be like 18 getting into this kind of stuff, you know?
We like to ask our guests for some words of wisdom or advice.
Oh, totally. I mean,
Please.
Look, with music, right, I think we're in a really weird spot right now because we kind of like, we took our ability to consume things through our 5 senses and just like jacked it up to 100%, which is cool. But I think we forgot that we're still stuck in these fleshy bodies that don't last very long, and we have this kind of spiritual need. And a lot of people are like, oh, you know, spiritual, whatever. That's some real shit, and everyone knows that's real, and that's why everyone can relate to someone flipping out at a desk job or whatever. You know, that means you're spiritual. That's proof you're spiritual,
right? Because
your soul can be destroyed. It means you understand that point. I think we live in a time where it's very, very, very important that we acknowledge that art is sacred. It's not just some like thing like get rich, have fun, be better than everyone. That's bullshit, and we need to shut that down and acknowledge that this is like, it's the Kandinsky called the artist the spiritual guide of the masses, you know, and Kurt Vonnegut called the artist the canary in the coal mine theory, which is that the artist's responsibility is to be sensitive so that people know something's happening before anyone else would know that's happening. Joseph Campbell called the artist the new myth makers. So there's, you know, I'm not the first one to think, hey, this is a really important role, and it's not something you can just like fluff about with. And I think it's really important that if someone thinks that they want to be a creative, that that's coming from a place of genuine expression, and that that is your top priority. Even if you lose money, it has to be honest that what you're doing. And I seriously think we have to do that, you know? And people say, oh, yeah, but I like this, I like that. Well, you know what else people like? Fast food. And you know what happens when you eat too much fast food? Yeah. You get diabetes, you get an epidemic, which is killing people. Yeah. Right? Same shit happens. It's not always about like, oh, I like this. You got to listen, you know? Sometimes it hurts a little bit, you know? At first, you're like, that song's like, it's getting to my emotions. Just like sit with it as you know, it feels really good if you just feel it the whole way through. And it's not all about annihilation and hyping yourself up into some crazy where you forget about everything. Sometimes it's about remembering what's going on. So, I don't know.
That's well said.
What I think.
Thank you.
Was it all a lie? No. I'm keeping it all inside. I needed time. I really need something right.
Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe.
And if you're really feeling it, please hit us up on Patreon. Cheers.